Hello everyone. My name is Peter. Welcome to the true stories being shared here. Please sit back and listen to today's story. The monster-in-law was banned from my wedding. My stepmother, 28M, has been the life of the party ever since she married my father, 49F. She's organized every party and holiday for my dad's side of the family, and as I grew up, I tolerated it for my dad's sake, even though I never really enjoyed it. She was always controlling and irritable if anyone complained about anything. But for my dad's sake, I kept quiet, because according to him, it helped her feel included. I'm set to marry my fiancée Jane, 26F, this July. We got engaged early in 2021, but Jane got pregnant a few months later, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So we've had a long engagement. From day one, my stepmother tried to hijack our wedding plans, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced at Jane's dress appointments, etc. We asked her repeatedly to stop. My dad wanted us to humor her, but it was clear she was furious about not being the one to organize the wedding or being listed as mother of the groom on the invitations. Besides our little son, we have Luke, 4M, Jane's younger brother. She was awarded custody of him a few months after we started dating, after his parents passed away. I eventually moved in with them when the pandemic hit, and I've been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad, but refers to us as his big sister and Ob, but we love him like our own. However, my stepmother hates Luke. She accused Jane of trapping us into the family with a baby, a claim that only got worse after our son was born. My dad is very close to Jane and loves the kids, but my stepmother has forbidden him from babysitting Luke, so we don't often leave the kids with them. Instead, Jane's brother and Sil usually watch the kids for us since their kids are close in age to ours. Last Sunday, we had an event to attend, and my BL was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in a different city, and so do my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place, and we left. When we returned, we found both kids crying, my stepmother screaming, and my dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told my stepmother that both he and our son would be the ring bearers at our wedding, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wouldn't allow that because he wasn't family. Then she slapped him when he started crying. His lip was split. She'd never reached this point before. We immediately banned her from our home and wedding. My dad was furious and said he wouldn't come without her. He's also convinced half of his family, by downplaying what my stepmother did, to boycott the wedding. This includes my stepbrother, who's fully siding with his mom, no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Jane and I are standing our ground, but many of my cousins who aren't coming anymore are asking us to reconsider. Almost all of Jane's family supports us, but one of her aunts thinks that maybe my stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. Honestly, I agree that my family has enabled her behavior. I love my dad and really want him at my wedding, but I'm more than willing to go and see if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the part where I mentioned that we pressed charges. We took Luke to his pediatrician the next day and gathered all the evidence we could. We not only got photos of Luke's face, but by some miraculous stroke of luck, we also got footage from the nanny cam. Some commenters were right to suggest that my stepmother wasn't invited to our home, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we prepared for it. We never expected she'd actually do something this awful, but we never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there's some footage of her yelling and Luke crying before and after the incident. She now has child abuse on her rap sheet. We're not letting her get away with this. Edit 2. There's a lot of extra info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some comments. I didn't expect the amount I've received so far, but all I'll say for now is that Luke is okay. The pediatrician visit happened the next day. He's had a counselor. Jane was quite traumatized when her parents and stepmom passed away, and worried it would affect him, and will continue to receive support. We're also hugging and spoiling him a bit more than usual. He's still sad, but much better. Update 1. 5 days later. I want to thank everyone who took the time to read and / or comment on my previous post. It's been a tough week, but it's been great to know people care. I haven't been able to reply to every comment, but I'll try to address some in this update. This might be a little long. I'll start by saying that Jane and I are going NC with my dad and stepmother. We haven't actually spoken to either of them since the incident, and I have no intention of being the one to reach out. Any contact between us has been handled by my sister. She's fully on our side, but will be going LC for the time being. I've decided to follow Jane's approach to handling people she cares about. Forgive what's apologized for, but never forget. Basically, if my dad or stepmother truly understood what they did wrong and sincerely apologized, we'd be willing to forgive them, even if reluctantly. But we'll never forget, or let them forget, what they did to our family. And for now, neither of them is allowed anywhere near Luke, our son, and any future children we may have, even if we do forgive them. As for the rest of my family, I've read a lot of comments suggesting that I should post pictures of Luke's face, as well as the footage from the nanny cam. I'm not very active on social media, but even if I were, I'm not comfortable exposing my injured preschooler like that, especially since nothing on the internet ever really goes away. I've also decided not to share these pictures with my family, unless absolutely necessary. Perhaps I should mention that, although my family loves my dad, most of them don't like my stepmother much. She had 2 failed marriages before meeting my dad. Her first marriage resulted in my stepbrother, and he cheated on his then-girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and immediately hated my stepmother. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative from the start, but she also tried to insert herself into the matriarch of the family role in any way she could. Taking on the task of planning every family event has been her favorite method because of all the attention and praise that comes with it. The main reason I hated those parties growing up is that she always found a way to make everything about her, even Christmas, my birthday, and my sister's birthday. The rest of the family was neutral about it, but they never liked her. It's different with Luke. Most of my family hadn't met him until the COVID restrictions loosened up, by which point he was 2 years old. He's a bright, really sweet kid, and since there weren't any other kids in the family, everyone immediately started doting on him. From my perspective, my stepmother was angry that Jane and Luke were accepted into my family so easily compared to her experience, and that's why she resents both of them, but I can't confirm that. She's also furious that she's not involved in the wedding at all, aside from not being the planner. She's tried to pressure us into letting her officiate. One of Jane's closest friends was invited to do that role a year ago. Make my stepbrother my best man, he doesn't care, and I already have my best friend. Or have her sister's daughter be our flower girl. We promised that role to Jane's 3-year-old niece. Her sister's daughter is also 15 and doesn't know us. She also tried to convince us to have my dad walk Jane down the aisle since her dad passed away, but her oldest brother, the BIL I mentioned in the first post, was enlisted for that. My stepmother was upset that my family wasn't as involved in the wedding as Jane's, and kept making comments like, that would never happen if we let her take charge. That said, nothing excuses treating a child so poorly, especially if it really is petty jealousy as I suspect. Since I haven't spoken to my dad, my sister has been keeping me updated on what he's been up to. From what I know through her, the story my dad and stepmother are telling the rest of the family completely omits Luke's injury and the abuse allegations. It implies that Jane and I banned them because we were mad at my stepmother and decided to take it out on my dad. Since most people didn't like my stepmother, explaining what really happened that night hasn't been difficult, and most of the relatives I really want at the wedding have apologized and chewed out my dad. Those who don't believe us, as well as those who say we overreacted, have been informed that they're no longer welcome in our home. That's mostly people from my dad's generation, so I can't say I'm surprised. But realizing that they're biased enough to defend a woman they hate after she hurt a child, just to keep my dad happy, has reassured me that I don't need any of them in my life. My stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to believe that his mother could hurt a child, even with all the evidence we have. I have to admit I understand. I love my mother too, but that doesn't mean I'm excusing his obliviousness. So he's also banned. It's a shame since we grew up close, but I have no regrets. Also, Jane has 3 siblings other than Luke, the oldest Bill, a twin brother, and a sister, and I'm closer to them now than I ever was to him. Speaking of Jane's family, they're all angry about what happened and have been completely supportive of us. Jane's extended family basically adopted Luke after she got custody of him and has been calling frequently to make sure he's still okay. We managed to save some money from people we're not inviting and decided to use it to help Jane's cousin. She lives in a different country and couldn't come to the wedding before, so we're covering her plane ticket. Luke is much better and almost completely back to being the sunny kid he was before. The split lip was shallow. It's healing, but it didn't need stitches. A few days ago, we sat him down and explained that my dad and my stepmother wouldn't be around anymore. He really liked my dad but understands that he and my stepmother come as a package deal. He's clearly scared of her, but we're doing our best to make him feel safe. Jane and I have reassured him that he is family, we love him, and nothing will change that. I'm not too worried about my dad or stepmother trying to show up at the wedding, but we've notified the venue and given them pictures just in case they try anything. Better safe than sorry. Some people have pointed out that my stepmother is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree, for obvious reasons. Her main reason for most things she does is that she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. My dad has forced me to go along with all her plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to excuse her without realizing that this is essentially a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke is actually family, is what finally made me accept that while I'll always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore. It's heartbreaking to know my son won't have the only remaining biological grandparent in his life, but he's got 2 awesome step-grandparents to make up for that. Right now, I'm sad but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like complaining about my life. It's messy, but it's beautiful. I love my fiancé, I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. To anyone upset with my censor, when the AITA post didn't go through, Jane suggested I make the post less recognizable. I'm not used to Reddit, so I may have overdone it a bit. I hope this is my last update on this story, but I'll keep you posted. Again, thank you all for your love and support. Best wishes to you all. Update 2, 12 days after the first update. I'll start by, possibly, disappointing a lot of you. We're facing the reality that my stepmother is unlikely to get anything more than a slap on the wrist. Jane and I are discussing our next steps with our lawyer, but we're still unsure how we'll proceed. It's too early to say, so we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves any more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're starting the process of obtaining a restraining order against my stepmother. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week after the incident, including the footage from the nanny cam and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for now. I still haven't spoken to my dad. My sister is still LC but is seriously considering going NC with him. Since my sister is the only one on my side still talking to our dad, he keeps trying to ask about me and see if I've calmed down yet. According to her, he's upset that half the family won't talk to him, but still doesn't seem to grasp the reason. I told my sister she doesn't need to keep playing messenger between me and my dad. I never asked her to do that, and it's clearly taking a toll on her, but she's determined to stop only when she feels like she needs to. By the way, there's absolutely no doubt that my stepmother assaulted Luke. Not only did Luke say it as soon as we got home, but my dad confirmed it in his failed attempt to defend her actions. He never tried to hide it from us. That, and him giving Luke an ice pack, is honestly the only positive thing I can say about his actions. And my stepmother was too busy screaming about what a whiny brat Luke was to deny it. To those who guessed my stepmother is younger than my dad, you get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They met when I was around 15. Also, my stepbrother is only a month older than me. She's turning 50 later this year. She had him at 21 and married his dad a year later. Both of our kids are mostly fine. Luke is back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he has nothing better to do. He's had fewer nightmares this past week and has asked to sleep in our bed twice. We don't mention my dad around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old has learned 2 new words, hi and bye, and Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is visiting for a few days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke is excited to see her, and Jane is excited to get drunk with her. I can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us up. I'm not doing well at work, and neither is Jane. She's usually the type to keep negative emotions to herself, but she's cried herself to sleep almost every night since the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like this, and I can't help but feel this is my fault. Part of me is trying to tell me that I couldn't have known my stepmother would do something like this, but that doesn't really change anything. I let my dad near my kids unsupervised, knowing she'd likely tag along. This is the most guilt I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll forgive myself. Jane has been doing better lately and is trying to convince me to see a therapist. I've never really done that before except for a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now I feel like it's the right time to try. I was surprised by a few messages this week from people telling me to forgive my dad and stepmother and re-invite them to the wedding. That's not happening. The reality is I'm never willing to forgive my stepmother. My dad may have fallen far enough that it could be huge, but I'll never understand or forget what she did. Also, while the wedding is the last thing on our minds right now, we're not postponing it. We considered rescheduling, but the date we've chosen is almost the only one that works for our clients. We've got the passwords to all the vendors and gave them clear instructions that they're not to speak to anyone other than us. Jane's family is larger and closer, which is why they're more involved in the wedding than mine, but I do have family involved. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom will be walking down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me realize even more how much I love this woman. I couldn't ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I don't know what I'd do without her. This hasn't torn us apart, and I couldn't be more grateful. I probably won't update again until after the wedding, unless something big happens. In the meantime, as always, best wishes to you all. Update 3. I saw my dad and stepmother again for the first time since she attacked my son. I didn't intend to update again before the wedding, but something pretty big happened. The good news is we got the RO. The bad news is that Jane and I had to face both my stepmother and dad in court. This was the first time we'd seen them since we kicked them out of our house over a month ago, and neither of us was looking forward to it. We left the kids with Jane's brother and SIL, so at least Luke didn't have to see them. The hearing went a lot faster than I expected. I'll give credit where it's due. My dad was at least smart enough to understand they had no chance of winning this. There was so much evidence against them. We not only had the nanny cam footage, photos, and Luke's medical records, But my sister also compiled every message and email my stepmother sent to her and the family about what happened. And my stepmother hates talking on the phone, so there was a lot of that. They didn't even bother hiring a lawyer for the hearing. The judge granted us a protective order against my stepmother. She's no longer allowed to be near us or our property within 500 feet. We'll be changing all the locks this week, and I'm also thinking of changing my phone number. I must admit that the moment we left the court was the moment I felt the safest since this whole ordeal began. Jane was almost crying with joy as we got into the car. We picked up the kids and went to McDonald's with my Bill and his family to celebrate. A few hours later, my dad called me. The order doesn't apply to him, so he's still able to do that. Jane and the kids were asleep, so I answered. I didn't expect him to have a sudden change of heart and apologize, but I decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was really necessary. I made it very clear that my stepmother would never come near Jane or my kids again, and I was glad we got the RO to formalize that. Every excuse he made for my stepmother was pretty easily shut down. Then he continued to prattle on about family, how great my stepmother was, and all she'd done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I responded by listing every time I could remember her lying, crossing boundaries, or being inconsiderate toward me, my family, or my sister. I dredged up my entire adult and childhood life. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones, most recently wedding planning, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower, and my sister's college graduation, her obsession with the idea of a perfect family, and her disgusting attitude toward Luke. I also remembered to mention her habit of rummaging through mine and my sister's things when we were kids. That's trivial compared to everything else, but the behavior continued until my sister moved out of their house just 3 months ago. For instance, we're pretty sure she found out about Jane's dress appointment by reading my sister's planner when she wasn't home. Some of the memories I mentioned were lengthy and difficult to explain, but they reinforced the truth that my stepmother meant nothing to me. He tried to make the excuse that she didn't feel included again, but I shut him down. I said that he had the chance to stand up for his grandkids, but he chose his monstrous wife instead, and that was enough to make me not want anything to do with him anymore. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister told me that he called her afterward, and she told him she was also going NC with him. I think we're both starting to accept that our dad isn't going to change. That's sad, but he's made his priorities clear, and his grandkids aren't among them. That's all for now. While it's still fresh in my mind, I'm thinking of sharing some of the stories I reminded my dad of, but that'll take a while. Until then, as always, best wishes to you all. Update 4. After over 2 years of engagement, Jane and I finally got married last Saturday. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but we'll get there. Hopefully. The wedding was amazing. The kids had fun, our extended families finally met, and we danced so much I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his role as ring bearer seriously and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Other than my aunt grimacing and having to be wheeled out, which I had a feeling would happen anyway, everything went according to plan. It's been 4 months since we got the RO against my stepmother. Things have been almost quiet, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Except completely quiet, but we don't always get what we want. I was never really worried about my stepmother showing up at the wedding, especially after the RO. Her getting near us is literally illegal, and we made it clear that if she tried, we'd call the police immediately. My friends still warned me to take precautions, most of which I followed. Of course, my stepmother didn't show up, but I strongly believe that any money spent on security was well spent, so no regrets there. My stepbrother and I have wished each other happy birthdays and texted Jane in June. That's the only contact we've had in these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My dad has given up trying to reach out to me. We haven't spoken since April. For some reason, he's still trying to talk to my sister, but she's ignoring him. A few days after she went NC with him, they had a huge argument over the phone about how my stepmother has treated us over the years. Insults were thrown, sore subjects were brought up, and most importantly, my dad sided with my stepmother on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterward. I wanted to call him and tell him off, but she asked me not to. She's okay now. She didn't block him, but she doesn't answer his calls or reply to his messages. She's only received 3, a weak apology, one on my birthday in May, and a rambling one after neither of us wished him a happy Father's Day. Despite our differences, he's still our dad after all. He's not wrong. I love my dad, and I always will, but I can't be around him anymore. While I'm closing that door, I haven't locked it yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants to come back into the family. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's even the smallest chance he might, I'll consider cracking the door open an inch or two. That's my wife's suggestion. I'm much less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. Still, she hasn't forgiven him. Or my stepmother. Jane has always been incredibly protective of Luke, so it's no surprise this disaster has shaken her. A part of me feared she would blame me, but she called me an idiot when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months, and it's helped more than I expected. I've realized that my stepmother's behavior toward me growing up was much worse than I always thought, and it's been great to finally get these feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm happier than I've ever been. I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I've always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life could be this good for me. Update 5. Hey everyone! I've been off Reddit for a few months due to some stuff at work. But a lot of people messaged me about my stepbrother, so I want to give you all a small update. I've been busy and tired, so I might gloss over some details. Ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee in August. He had a falling out with my stepmother, and the RO was brought up. She lied to him about some details, accusing Luke of bullying my son, bad-mouthing Jane, etc. But this time, he forced her to tell him the truth. My stepbrother started reassessing his relationship with his mother. After talking to his therapist and friends about it, as well as how she raised him, he finally accepted that I wasn't exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me in June, but he didn't want to distract me and Jane from the wedding. My stepbrother and I have spent the past 4 months rebuilding our relationship. We've met for coffee or lunch and discussed his mother and what she did to our lives and my kids. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids met him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things between us were awkward for a while, but we're okay now. He's also making amends with my sister. He cut off contact with my stepmother entirely in early November. Jane and the kids are doing great. Luke turned 5 in September, and our son will turn 2 in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil, while my stepbrother is staying with his girlfriend. Everything is wonderful. That's all for now. I'm logging off, and I'll keep you posted if anything happens. Happy holidays, everyone. Best wishes to you all.